All right, so the one that we had here that we wanted to talk about next, and I'm not necessarily part of the breaking news, but maybe something that we only skim over. I don't feel we need to go into too much detail on it, is the Astralis skipping of the events. So for those of you who aren't aware, the next couple of months is going to be relatively bleak in terms of having Astralis and actually Na'Vi, if you look at their tournaments, but you have to consider Na'Vi just did play in Star Series Season 7. Yep. So I think it's the major was the last tournament with best of threes as the majority of the format that Astralis have played in. And it will be the last event until ECS, I believe, which they've already qualified for. So there's quite a big break there in time. Na'Vi as well, so like I just mentioned, they did play in Star Series Season 7, but the next time that we will see them, they're not in Dallas either, right? And they're definitely not going to qualify for ECS. I don't think they've even signed up for the next week, which we were talking about 2 days ago. So
that whole thing.
Yeah, for them, what are we looking at? It has to be Pro League? Pro League finals?
EPL, yeah, they're playing EPL groups, and the group is pretty stacked. It's Fnatic, G2, Windigo, Na'Vi. So even if they could theoretically not go through that group, it wouldn't be like a massive surprise. It would be like a surprise, but not the biggest one. So
a classic Na'Vi situation, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah, especially it's not an important tournament, not that much hype. But yeah, I mean, at least they need to not be last.
What the fuck?
I mean, for the group
the
stage.
LAN, the tournament at the LAN.
Well, yeah, of course.
They have to turn up and fire
but
up.
the implications are obviously big. So
yeah, but you don't know.
I mean, that's one of the biggest tournaments that you want to attend. Basically, like, sure, if you skip like a Dallas or like a DreamHack Masters or something, but this is like, what is it, 750,000? Bigger than almost anything but a major, basically. So that's definitely not a tournament you wanna skip out on.
What's curious as well here is, I think, to talk about more so, like, because a lot of people were bringing like the whole conflict of interest debate into things, and that's nothing that I want to get stuck into at the moment with the Astralis. You guys can feel free, but the big thing here is for me that is curious, by skipping Sydney and skipping Dallas. Okay, sure, they're both a relative distance away from Europe, right? It's not close by any means, but that's two Grand Slam events. Yeah, right? If they had gone to those, and they're still right now at the peak of their power, even though they did make it to the final in Blast, but we can talk about that when we get to it. They're still at the peak of their power, and if they could, do it back-to-back real quickly, why wouldn't you? Because eventually teams are going to catch up, right? So they've already won one. Their window to win two could have actually come to, if they went to Sydney, they won there. They went to Dallas, they won there. Then they had Pro League finals, they won there. They could have won another $1 million, but 7 months into the year? It would have been fucking bananas, right? So I look at it like it's a bit disappointing that we won't see them in best of threes until ECS, and we won't see them in best of threes against other decent teams. Like when I say other decent teams, I mean all the other good teams in the world until Cologne, which also may or may not have all of the good teams, maybe 1 or 2 omissions there. So likely we won't get all of the teams who are currently at the top playing against one another until the next major, which is in Berlin in September. So there's going to be quite the drought of seeing a lot of the good teams going toe-to-toe, at least in the best-of-3 format. We're going to have Madrid for Blast again soon. So we'll get to see them play again there, but it's just the best of ones. What do you guys take on this?
I mean, it's definitely not great, just because every time Astralis is not at the tournament, it's a little bit less legitimate, right? Like whoever wins it is basically, but what if Astralis was here? Would they actually be able to take them down in the final? That's the problem that I have. And I'm just going to touch on what Cedric has brought up, and I think that was a really good point about the conflict of interest that is going on with Blast, basically, which is, you have to think, is a part of the reason why Astralis are skipping some of these events. Because obviously those 3, what is it, how many Blast stops? 3 more Blast stops?
There's meant to be 7 Blast stops.
LA,
right?
Madrid, and am I missing something? I don't think so. The one that happened now,
announced.
basically.
Yeah.
Miami. Yeah, so with those events being there, like we said, or like I said last time when we were talking about this issue, kind of brushing off on it, I didn't see it as that surprising, considering like the locations that they have to go through. They would just skip, they would skip half of the events, but it wasn't that massive. The problem is that what Cedric has brought up was exactly this deal, legitimizing issue that Blast or Refresh could easily take advantage of, and kind of try to bring down some of these tournament organizers to legitimize their own events instead. So that's Definitely a legitimate issue that I see with what Astralis is doing.
Prof?
Oh, Striker just got cut out. On
Yeah,
my
no.
side.
I was just got stuck. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the thing is, yeah, I agree with the whole thing. It's not even annoying. It's just depressing and bad that we'll have. It's literally could be Cologne, could not be Cologne, could be first major and second major of the year. Only tournaments in 8 months that we have all of the top teams, and playing like a real format, not this blast best of one bullshit, like show match, exhibition tournament style, whatever it is, because it's not a real tournament in what we have now in CSGO. So yeah, that really does make you think about like what is going on in the scene as it is right now.
Yeah, I think it's a very curious one. Just to play maybe devil's advocate for a second here, if Astralis wasn't the best team in the world and then they were still doing this, then it obviously wouldn't have as much sway, right? It wouldn't affect the other tournaments in the same way that we're considering right here. It's in a way, like the way we're looking at it now, a happy coincidence in that regard. But I guess that's the way it is right now. Astralis are the best team, and I do agree, not having them at a tournament always leaves us with the question mark of how good actually were Na'Vi when they won that tournament. Or, say if Liquid win a big one, and let's say Liquid win Sydney, it's like, well, they didn't have to beat Astralis, so we're always going to have that, unfortunately. But I think what they're actually doing by skipping all of these big ones is actually tarnishing their own legacy, because they just lost Blast, right? They go to let's say they go to the next Blast and they don't make it to the final there either, right? They bomb out again. Okay, well, we're still going to be like, oh, well, it's not best of threes. How long do we do that before we start going, are Astralis like just looking for money fights? Like when you look at like in the sense of the UFC, is it just like they want to do a Conor McGregor and fucking just go to tournaments that they know they can get bang for buck kind of thing? Are they worried about legitimately coming up time and time again? Like, do they want to be like a fucking John Jones who just wants to get in the ring and obviously not doing the drugs and getting banned, but getting in the fucking ring and just going for it, just getting stuck in week after week? Now we know that there are health issues with players in the team. We also know that attending every event is bad as well. But you're traveling quite a distance regardless. Like they just went to Miami, they went to Brazil. There's events that they go into that are a decent distance away. And my question, Mark, is more around them. If they just drop off the face of the earth, then it didn't really feel like they put up too much of a fight, right? Because they're just going to simmer off. They're going to kind of disappear from our thought process. So they're still going to be the best team in our minds, especially when you look at Blast and we're going to say, well, they lost in best of ones, they lost this, they lost that. We're always going to have those little things there. But it's like when Na'Vi, Liquid, Renegades, ENTs, let's say FaZe and MIBR get back to decent form, we have those teams going toe-to-toe, giving us some exciting Counter-Strike, and one of them steps up and starts winning all of these that they're going to, then the narrative has to shift, right? Like Astralis start becoming a thing of the past in our minds, because even if they are going to the Blast events, which do a fantastic job of producing a stadium event for those 2 days, they do a great job. We have a very stringent way we look at Counter-Strike now. Best of ones are their own discipline, best of threes are their own discipline, best of fives, I know Prof doesn't like it, it's his own discipline in a way. And if you're not competing against the best teams on a regular basis, you're not really defending your crown anymore, right? So that's just my little question mark there.
Yeah, just look at that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just trying to say that, like, if they don't win Madrid, even like if they go out in groups or whatever, it's going to be 2.5 months from Sao Paulo to ECS season 7 finals. Yep. That will be 2.5 months without a big tournament win. So you can just imagine like what that will do to their ranking and to everything. Like they could easily lose the #1 spot if someone else wins like everything that's there. Maybe not easily because they're so much ahead of everyone, but it could at least put them in contention. Like, are they actually the best team right now?
And just quickly, Strike, I'll let you jump in a sec, but a point here that can be made, because now both ECS and Pro League have changed their formats, Pro League moving to LAN and ECS actually having a much better format, which has made online Counter-Strike exciting again for me. There isn't a chance for Astralis just to have tune-up matches online in the official environment anymore. That's been completely removed from it. It's not a weekly league that they can play in anymore, unless they want to go play in the fucking doldrums of tournaments that HLTV.org aren't covering anymore, right? So they've kind of kind of, it's not that they've shot themselves in the foot, it just means they have less opportunities now to actually be in the limelight competing. So I don't know if that's going to have an effect on them at all.
I mean, I'm not sure that they are in any real danger of losing the #1 spot in the next couple of months, just because, let's say Liquid would probably have the best chance of taking them down at this point, right? Because they're something like they're second with something like 380 something points below. So if they win Sydney, they're probably going to close the gap a little bit more. But then there's like Madrid. Are they in Madrid? They're at least not as far as we know thus far. There's only 4 teams announced at this point.
One of them's a qualifier team.
But then there's Dallas, where Liquid are. So sure, if Liquid win 2 of those 3 events, I guess I could see them being able to put up a fight against Astralis in the #1, and they're in the race for #1. But knowing Liquid and then seeing how they lost this Miami, for example, I don't think that's going to happen. So, and neither do I see Navi making that, or like winning a couple of events out of 3, especially with Liquid at those events and kind of the implications of those matchups. So I don't really see that Astralis are actually gonna lose the spot for #1, but obviously we will still be wondering about, you know, where do they actually stand if they lose the next Blast in Madrid.
Yeah.
So that's the thing.
Like, you can't really say they had, like, let's say they go back and after Blast they go to ECS, they win more tournaments and they're the #1 for the whole year.
Yeah.
Can you actually say that they are like the best team over a 2-year span when like 3 months they didn't win anything and they played 1 tournament in that, or 2 tournaments, 2 Blast tournaments over 3 months? It just doesn't really hold up to being like defending your title of being the best team in the world.
The thing is, like, we probably expect teams to kind of go back and forth and not have just like a clear #2, as we saw in last year. Basically, yeah, we for a part of the year, FaZe were kind of in a good spot because they won like 3 events sure with standards and shit, and then Navi were really consistently like making semifinals almost all the time. Towards the end, it was Liquid kind of like taking over that mantle of the second best team. So we always had like teams kind of like taking turns and being in second place. So we always knew that Astralis were better than any of them because none of the other ones really stepped up to beat everybody under them. So I feel like that's going to happen here as well, especially given what we've seen so far with FaZe now taking an event out of nowhere, basically Liquid again not being able to win in a final, and Navi winning the previous tournament where Astralis weren't. So I feel like this is just going to continue, and that's why I don't think Astralis will ever be in danger of even losing what you're talking about, like a 2-year long stance on #1.
What about the Navi factor here? Because they're also going and skipping Dallas, or they won't be in Dallas. So they're up for discussion in the same way. They most likely won't be at the ECS finals. Do we think that some of these teams are choosing to take extended little breaks right now? Obviously, we know Electronics just had a child because the player break in the middle of the year has been cut down by a week or 2 weeks because of the major cycle. Do we think this is something that they're getting ahead of now so they can dedicate more time in that kind of a window, or this is just a happy coincidence?
I think it's just, I mean, from talking to Simple and from the interviews that we saw, they're clearly going on a more of an organized route. Trying to take a bit of more of the Astralis approach, getting on some more people and stuff like that. So it's obviously like that's not coincidental. That's just a response to what Astralis is doing and trying to battle them for that #1 spot at some point. So sure, that I can see where they're coming from. And to be honest, like Dallas, if they only skip Dallas and don't make it to ECS, which is, like you say, pretty likely at this point.
I mean, They aren't even playing ECS.
They aren't even playing, yeah, that's right. I forgot about that, because they are one of the few teams that aren't there out of the big ones. But yeah, obviously they don't even play that, so they're not going to... That's not by choice that they don't make it there, right? And ESL Pro League, we'll see. Like we said, they have a pretty hard group coming up, so they might not even make it to the finals, but like obviously we expect them to.
I really don't understand like why they're skipping Dallas, just because like the ECS tournament is after Dallas and they're not in ECS, so that's not the reason they're skipping Dallas. There's nothing really before it. Madrid ends like May 11th and this starts May 28th, so there's 2 weeks between that. I don't understand, like, what are it must be something along the lines
That'd be something personal,
of what you're saying, Sponge, just like taking a break early so they don't take a break later in the before the
think
major.
about how much time they have right now, right? So they're obviously all traveling back from Miami yesterday/today, getting home probably on the Monday due to the time differences. So now it's what is it? It's a week and a half until Sydney, basically. Oh, 2 weeks basically, because my travel days are a little bit different.
They're not in Sydney either, by the way.
No, so let's just round up and say it's 3 weeks to Madrid. So I have 3 weeks at home now until Madrid. The Madrid is literally just a 2-day tournament. Yeah, you're right. That is 3 days as well. Okay, so there is a little bit more moving around there. Yeah, maybe it is just taking a little bit of foot off the gas in that regard, because the player break in the middle of the year, at least this year, I'm hearing murmurs that for next year things are going to get changed in terms of the major windows. But at the moment now, the year is kind of just going to keep going. Doesn't feel like there's going to be a stopping point, especially if you want to win the major and you're one of the challenger teams, right? You may as well just fucking boot camp the whole way through, stay in Europe in summer, and then let it fizzle out towards the end of the year. But all right, I think we've talked enough about this one.